happens when we get to agenda item 4.01, which is the reason you're here, which is the study session for the implementation of the California Dream Act. This meeting is called to order. And before I begin with item 2, public comments, just some housekeeping items. First, please, those of you, okay, they can hear me, but you can't, so that's more important. Thank you. Silence your phones, please. Either turn them off or put them on vibrate. This proceeding is being recorded, and we don't want to distort any of the noise. And then, as you came in the main doors, and before you, just as you entered the hallway to the Black Box Theater are the restrooms, and there's still plenty of refreshments available there. Feel free to, during the course of the meeting, help yourself and we'll move forward. And with that, then, do we have any speaker cards for public comments? No. Okay, we do not. Are there any changes to the agenda? Trustee Hernandez or Dr. Noor? Okay, thank you. That brings us then to item 4, the policy hearing, which is a study session, the implementation of the California Dream Act. And again, let me thank each and every one of you for your attendance and your hoped for participation. I want to especially thank, where is he? Dr. Ramon Flores, the chair of the board of the County Office of Education. Thank you for being here. And also special thanks to those of you that traveled a great distance to be here. That means representatives from the California Student Aid Commission, California Community Colleges, California State University, the University of California, an association of private and independent colleges and universities. And thank you in advance for sharing your knowledge and information and expertise. This legislative committee hearing is about the California Dream Act, which became law in 2011, and increased access to financial aid for undocumented students who attend public universities, community colleges, or private colleges in California. The purpose of today's informational public hearing is to share information on how the California Dream Act is being implemented at public institutions. And the gathering of this information is intended for the ultimate benefit of the Ventura County Community College District students at the 3 colleges. Although many undocumented students were raised in California and are eligible for in-state tuition, college is still financially unattainable for the majority of low-income students who are ineligible to work because of their legal status. These students are Californians in all but paperwork. They grew up here and are part of the fabric of our communities. The California Dream Act reduces the financial burden that AB 540 students face by allowing these students the ability to apply and receive state aid in California. The California Dream Act promotes individual responsibility by encouraging those who have been raised as Californians to become responsible, educated adults and productive members of our communities. And lastly, by investing in our youth, it is in the best interest of our state's economy to have an educated workforce to provide the innovation necessary to keep California competitive in the global economy. And just personally, this is just one in a series of related meetings, formal and informal, that address this kind of an issue that speaks to increased access for all of our students, but certainly those that may have a greater need. And I am looking forward to the information to be gleaned from this for our future work on the legislative committee. And with that, I would ask Trustee Hernandez if you have any welcoming remarks to share.
I want to thank everyone for taking the time out of your busy days to be here to join us. We believe this is very important and what we've put forth, and I want to thank the Chancellor and staff for helping to put this together so that we can have the opportunity to hear and to discuss and to start to plan so that we can, as a committee, start to put forth the policy in regards to the district and how we're going to give guidance and implementation. So again, thank you all very much for being here, and we look forward to hearing from all of you. If for some reason there is an opportunity for some input that doesn't provide opportunity today, we certainly would like to make sure that either through the president, through the chancellor, or through anyone, that you could get that information to us as a committee, and we can make sure that we consider it. So thank you.
And before I hand this over to Chancellor Moore to lead us through the presenters, if you didn't already pick it up, there's a lot of information materials that we're working off of today, so those of you that need them, there seem to be plenty left as well. Dr. Moore.
Thank you, Chair Perez. I'd like to, first of all, thank everyone for coming out today, specifically our presenters who have gotten on planes and have traveled. And understanding that you are giving us your time, for those of you who do and may have to leave early after your presentation to catch flights and to get back to your areas, feel free, we understand, and want to thank you in advance for coming out to provide this crucial piece of information. If you do, as Trustee Perez indicated, the booklet that's to my right, your left, page 2 or 3 of this document, page 2 of it, gives you the agenda. Because this is a informational hearing, what the plan and the goal is to provide information to the Legislative Committee with regards to the DREAM Act and how it is being reviewed, implemented, and shared throughout the different segments of California in public higher education. So you'll see the agenda for who we have on board here. We're taking groups and segments, and so we will begin with, or as the study session opens up, Chair Perez will invite each group up. So I think we're going to start, most importantly, with the California Student Aid Commission that will provide an overview, and then you can see the rest of the agenda works its way down. If at any point in time you would like contact information, these individuals will be providing information on their presentations. Some of their presentations may obtain their contact information. If not, my office or Lori from my office will be more than happy to provide you with their contact information after this particular informational hearing. And as Trustee Perez has indicated, this is an informational policy hearing, but another purpose of this hearing is that the Ventura County Board of Education is in the process of completion of their district higher education master plan, and part of that master plan and one of the goals is access and student success. And so we are trying to operationally define what that means for the campuses with regards to this particular policy hearing on implementation of the DREAM Act, and most importantly, the trustees being engaged in policy, obtaining this information in accordance with the timeline of their master plan. Will also be identifying later if they need to make any changes or adjustments to their existing policies on access. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. And with that, we'll begin the presentations, and beginning with that segment entitled Overview of the DREAM Act. And the first speaker would be Diana Fuentes-Michel, Executive Director of the California Student Aid Commission. And I guess Catalina Missler will also participate. She's the she's with Chief Program Administration and Services Division of the California Student Aid Commission. My apologies.
First, we want to just say thank you for the opportunity to be here. It's great that your board is taking leadership on this particular issue. Most of you know that this is the first year where California Dreamers, as we call them in the office, AB 540 students are eligible for financial aid, both at the institutional level and for the statewide Cal Grant program. Over 13 years ago, then Governor Davis and the California legislature passed Assembly Bill 540, which allowed students for the first time to pay in-state tuition at our public institutions. This is the first year, I don't know when, okay, not speaking too close to the mic. Okay, this is the first year where we have the opportunity to work directly with high schools and directly with the colleges to implement the DREAM Act. We want to talk to you today about some initiatives that you might take, working together with not only the Commission, but also with our public and private institutions. For those of you who don't know, the Cal Grant can be used at qualifying participating institutions both in the public and private sector, which means that students can use their Cal Grant award for the purposes of enrolling not only for 1 year, but if they maintain eligibility for 4 years. The guarantee of financial aid for 4 years has enabled thousands of students, not almost millions of students, if you look at the data over the last 60 years. I was fortunate to receive a Cal Grant B award to attend Loyola Marymount, so I understand the value that award plays in terms of affordability in higher education. In terms of some of the policy areas that you might look at, I think for those of us who are working with our colleagues at the colleges, what we're most concerned about is communication. Many students are not aware that the DREAM Act does provide them both the opportunity to attend by having in-state tuition, but also that financial aid is available. The communication, particularly for those students who are of immigrant status, who may not know until they apply to college that they are in fact not citizens or permanent residents and that they have an immigrant status, has been an issue. We've talked to many students who unfortunately learn when they're in the application process that they are not citizens or permanent residents. So I want to put that on your agenda in terms of communication. And today I did provide you with a packet that Chancellor Moore has given you, and I've also brought a DVD to show you a very brief presentation that the Commission is engaged in an effort in Northern California. The 24 northern counties of California are served by the Mexican Consulate, and we have joined with business and civic organizations to get out the word that in fact the DREAM Act is in place and that students have the ability to attend. And dealing with some of these issues that I just spoke about in terms of their immigration status, as well as the fact that there are timing issues related to the application process in terms of the application process for financial aid, that they have to submit a qualifying grade point average. Many of these students, as you know, do not have a social security number. They must have a way of identifying themselves through the application process. And we want to talk to you a little bit about a non-social security number project that we have in place in order to identify those students. And then we also want to talk to you about an emerging problem, which we see at the Commission in talking directly to students through our call center, where students will call us and tell us that there's a gap in funding, that even with a Cal Grant and even with institutional aid, that they would not be able to attend school or would have to attend school less than full time because they have insufficient aid. In other words, their packages are not complete with the Cal Grant, and in your situation in terms of the BOG, that there's still expenses that aren't being met that are creating a barrier. So we want to talk to you a little bit about that. Wanted to see now if we could see first the Steps to College DVD that we brought. It's about 5 minutes and 40 seconds in length. I think it speaks quite very much to the issues that students face. We interviewed a number of students in this video. They talk about the challenges that they face, and it also speaks to what we believe the institutions and the community needs to do in order to qualify for not only admissions but for financial aid.
When you do this, you are changing the history of your family. You know, your dad has been working hard, he took the first step, but you're taking the next step. Getting a college education, it's like going to change everything. So everybody who comes after you is going to do that much better. You are setting the stage, you are blazing the trail. Now you got to do the work. A lot of work, okay?
Felicidades, ojalá que califiques, ¿eh? ¿Sí? Órale, pues.
The last 3 years, Cien Amigos have joined together with the California Student Aid Commission, the Consulate General Office, to really begin to hold university fairs that makes timely information possible for students to launch their careers and to attain a university degree.
It's important because, like, for some of us, it gives us a better view of what college is going to be, and like to give us better opportunities of what we want to study and just to look forward to. So I'd be the first one in my immediate family to go to college.
I want to learn what college to go to, find out more about colleges, to know where to begin, have a career.
One of the sad things right now is that 50% of our elementary students in California are of Hispanic heritage, and most of them are Mexican American. And only 1 out of 10 college graduates in California is from the Hispanic community, from Mexican American community, the Latino community. So there's a gap. And this gap has existed now for almost 10 years. So it's really important that the community comes together and begins to expose not just the students, but entire families on the value of a college degree and how it's not only going to transform the life of an individual, but the life of the family and of society.
Take it to your school and they can help you with that too. We're ready to submit.
My immediate family, I will be the first one going to college.
I hope that students will be able to now see that these resources are open that were once not open. That means that if a student is bright enough and tries hard enough, they'll be able to succeed here at any public institution and some private universities as well.
Este es un esfuerzo para unir recursos y talento de muchas organizaciones basadas en Sacramento que pueden ayudarle a los jóvenes a llegar a la universidad. Aquí hay representantes de 40 y tantas universidades, tanto de México como del norte de California. Hay consejeros expertos que pueden ayudarle a los muchachos a llenar su solicitud para pedir ayuda financiera, y aquí hay también expertos que han dado conferencias a lo largo del día sobre temas como cómo ser aceptado en una universidad, cómo tramitar ayuda financiera, los requisitos migratorios para llegar a una universidad. En fin, ha sido un esfuerzo que involucra a mucha gente, a muchas personas, que está dirigido a elevar el número de mexicanos y de latinos en general que llegan a la universidad.
Oh, no, me siento muy orgullosa, muy contenta, y que se motive él, y que en cuanto le dije que había esto, lo dije sí, para informarnos más, pues.
It's really thinking more broadly about education. Some students think that they have to be A students in order to go on to higher education, and we're encouraging all students. There's a place for them in post-secondary education in a college or university, or a career opportunity that might be available through a career school environment. So what we're trying to do is to reach out to all Latino students to tell them that they can go on beyond high school.
Yo no llegué a la universidad sola. Muchas personas me aconsejaron, me encaminaron y me motivaron durante el proceso. Y por eso estoy aquí de voluntaria, porque quiero extender a las nuevas generaciones la mano de ayuda que yo recibí.
Go for it. Be everything and anything you want to be, and you can make great things happen for yourself, your family, and your community. It's less of a dream now and more of a reality. It's not the Dream Act, it's the Do It Act.
Thank you. One of the things I wanted to highlight about this effort is that it really is an effort between the University of California, the California State University, the California Community Colleges, the Association of Independent Colleges and Universities, as well as some of our selected for-profit institutions statewide. This effort has brought people together in the local community to raise $150,000 in private scholarships last year, which were awarded to students just last month. And Catalina had the opportunity to be there and watch the students. As I said before, communication is key in this area because we know that if the students don't understand that A, they're eligible, B, they must apply, and C, they have to provide us with information related to their identity. There has to be privacy concerns, particularly for those students who are undocumented and whose status is questionable. And one of the things that's important to note in this policy arena is that the Commission takes very seriously its role in terms of protecting the privacy of students. We have a separate application from the FAFSA, which is the California DREAM Act application. And as I said earlier, the Commission is willing, able, and here as a partner to work with you and the local community to make sure that all students fill out not only the DREAM application, but the FAFSA for those students who are United States citizens and permanent residents. In addition to that, we have joined with a number of school districts and community college districts across the state to make sure that we increase and improve the submission of GPAs, the grade point average, which is required in order to qualify for a Cal Grant. And as you know, many of those students will not have a Social Security number. And so the SSN project, the non-SSN project, we have numbers for you today that Catalina will go through with you in a minute that speak to what we need to do here in this community in order to make sure that all students have their GPA submitted. So we will, and we would want very much to work with you in order to get those particular issues addressed in your local community. I think in terms of the gap funding, the Commission will be discussing in November, and the Chancellor Moore is part of our Commission, one of our 15 members who will be looking forward to the next legislative cycle to make decisions and determinations for priorities. One of the things our senior management team tends to do is talk to the Commission about efforts by which we can try to assure some attention to this gap funding that I just spoke about. Many students who call our offices are concerned about having insufficient aid because they don't qualify for the federal student loan program. Many of them cannot yet find adequate jobs to support, and it really affects the time to degree and the ability for students to attend. So we'll be discussing that a little bit more. Catalina is going to talk about the numbers in terms of what we've seen here locally in terms of the Social Security number issue. Last count, and as your information will show you, we had over 29,000 students statewide who applied for the California DREAM Act. We're still in the process of assisting those students. So any issues that come forward in this hearing are very helpful to us, so that if we are unaware of circumstances that are preventing students from participating in the Cal Grant program or any of the institutional aid programs, we're here to work with you as a partner. So I'm going to turn it over to Catalina. Catalina is responsible for the day-to-day operations of the Cal Grant program, and she's an expert on these issues, and so I'm going to turn it over to her.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity. As Diana had said, I first thought every opportunity that we have that we're invited to speak to the district level, the campus level, with the students, it takes us closer to where we need to get in terms of doing the right job and making sure every student is eligible, or at least understands and is educated about what the process is. Might be a little early for the song Santa Claus is Coming to Town, but when I thought when we get invited to these events, it's like CSAC is coming to town, and we're bringing what I consider an opportunity and gifts that we have and the tools that are available that we can help the districts, offices, the campuses, and the high schools to get what we need so that every student knows that there's an opportunity to get a Cal Grant, and every student knows that the campus is helping them to get there. And so in looking at, and part of the song of Santa Claus is Coming to Town with CSAC is you better watch out, you better not cry, you better not pout, I'm telling you why. CSAC is coming to town, but we have an opportunity, being a centralized organization, of looking at data and seeing who is doing a good job and who still needs help to get there. And that's what we want to do. From the data that we get on the uploads of the GPAs from either high schools or the community colleges, we can look at that data and say, okay, who needs our help? Who needs training? Who needs to understand what the process is? And we're very willing to do that. Even though we understand what the resources and many of the cuts that campuses face and high schools face, we have many tools that we can help schools to take those steps to get us every high school senior GPA so that we can determine, as our agency determines, eligibility for a student for a Cal Grant award, and the information that's provided either through a DREAM application, that institutions have that information available to them. And whatever they need, they can contact us, and we can see what additional steps and additional tools we can make available to those campuses to get them there. Based on the GPAs that the community colleges have provided the commission, you guys are doing a great job. You're giving us the GPAs. You're using the non-SSN GPA process, so congrats to you on doing a good job there and getting students qualified. Looking at the high schools, looks like we need to provide a little assistance with the high schools, because a student who graduates as a high school senior and qualifies for a Cal Grant can use that Cal Grant out for their first up to 4 years. And the student who misses that first year, meaning if the commission didn't get a GPA to process and qualify them, they still have an opportunity a year out. So I think there's more information we need to provide to the high schools and to the colleges to inform them that students still don't lose out if they miss that first year of processing the application. For this first year, there's been a lot of lessons learned, and Commissioner Moore at our last commission meeting had advised us that let's look at the schools that are doing a good job. Let's look at the schools who have things in place that are working, and let's provide best practices for all campuses so that they can not reinvent the wheel, but use something that's already in place and that campuses may find easy to do because it's already there. So that's what our plan is to be able to provide institutions and campuses with best practices. What we're doing more of is establishing work groups and committees so that we can hear directly from the students, financial aid administrators, and other administrators on the campus, so we can all understand what the processes are and we can help in some areas, and also ultimately the goal is to get that student the correct information of what they need to know, what they need to do. So that's part of our plan in establishing committees. We ask that anyone who's interested in this process, we will be distributing information through our communications, and any volunteers or anyone willing to want to be part of it, we welcome that, as well as our regular communications. Join us if you can so that they can see the information that we have available that provides either tools or communications or updates. So that's very important. As Diana had mentioned, communication is a very key piece to this in terms of lessons learned, and that's what we found. Partnering, that's very important for us, is that partnering with the folks who make it happen on the campuses is another one of our goals, and so that we as in the steps to college and what the community did to get information out, and as a whole, I think that's a key piece of getting more people involved. And we found that also parents who sometimes are hesitant about giving information or releasing any information, and so sometimes their student or their child does not want to fill out any form because the parent is a little hesitant. Parents really need to understand too what the process is, so that they take away an understanding that they're not going to be harmed by giving information, and they're not going to be harmed by providing it in any way, so that their student can go to college, and there are financial aid resources available to them. So I think we're finding that that's a key piece with the parents, to get an understanding that it's okay to give the information, it is protected, and ultimately your student wins by getting the financial aid that they need to attain their degree objective.
I have just one quick question about these working groups or committees. Are they statewide based or regionally based, and where do they operate out of?
The California Student Aid Commission, we currently have a DREAM Act. When we first started with the process of preparing to implement the DREAM application, We have the segmental, the CSU, the UC, segmental representatives, the community college chancellor's office representatives, and various campuses that participate. We open that out to those who are interested in attending. What we do is we have a listserv. The Student Aid Commission has a listserv that releases information on any work groups that we're establishing, and we add the webinar information so that those that are interested can register and participate.
One of the things I'll add to that is that if the district and the colleges are interested in training, we can provide training via webinar. We don't have an extensive travel budget, but what we have been successful in doing is having webinars with either individual groups or campuses or segments to help them understand either the application process or the non-SSN project that we talked about. We had a very successful effort with the Los Angeles Unified School District, which, as you know, is a large school district with many concerns and challenges as we worked our way through the non-SSN project. And we are now receiving uploads of electronic data on the non-SSN side from the LA Unified School District as an example. Elk Grove is another example, so that they're submitting all of the GPAs for all of their students, which then puts them in the qualification pool.
And takes the workload off of the high school counselors who were doing it individually by campus. So having the district office provide that information to us, it relieves the counselor from that responsibility.
Thank you. Trustee Hernandez.
You had mentioned the high schools and working with the high schools and providing assistance. Could you just share a little bit more about, from what I picked up with regards to the uploading of grades, so that you get the information, let's take our local high schools here. You get the information so that you know that there's within there are some students that are potentially qualified but aren't applying. Was that what you were referring to?
Yeah, so we had in our numbers out of the 29,000 students that completed a DREAM application, there were about 7,000 students who filled out the DREAM application but didn't have a GPA. Therefore, we did not process them because you have to have the two pieces, the DREAM application and the GPA equals a Cal Grant. And we broke that down based on between the community college or the colleges and the high schools. And there were several high schools who, in terms of their numbers, are not uploading GPAs for the non-SSN students. Their numbers in comparison to the numbers that they're uploading for citizens, for those that have GPAs, the number is very low on the non-SSN. And what we have, that non-SSN GPA process is just as easy as the regular GPA process. And so, unfortunately, those 6,000 or 7,000 students aren't going to qualify for a Cal Grant because the GPA didn't get in time. So what we want to do is, by identifying those campuses who did not submit the GPAs, we want to work one-on-one with them. And we want to walk them through the process of what it takes to upload a GPA. We've been walking some campuses through, and they find that it's not that difficult. It's very easy. And so we will be working individually with every campus to make sure that they're giving us all student GPAs, whether it's non-SSN or SSN, that we get all of their high school, that all high school GPAs from all of their students, whether they feel or whether they think that they qualify to go to college, or if they're even going to college. Just for the student filling out the application could make that difference of the student knowing that there's financial assistance for them. It could make a difference for them, and just educating them that that process is easy for them. So our goal is to work individually with each campus.
So you could have a situation where a student goes through the process, applies, and then the information comes back saying, I'm sorry, your grades weren't uploaded, so you won't qualify. It was something outside of it.
So what we do when we get a GPA and a DREAM application or the FAFSA, and we process the student through, we let the student know that congratulations, you've been offered, you qualified for the Cal Grant. Those students who may have some missing pieces, we follow up with those students that something is missing still, you need to complete your your FAFSA. We also communicate with those students who do the DREAM application and remind them, hey, you still need the GPA to complete the process. So the communications that we have based on at least getting the DREAM application, we try to get to that student to tell them there's something still missing. The students who do not qualify, so let's say they are below the 2.0 or the GPA requirement, they will get a communication indicating that they weren't eligible, but there's still an opportunity for them to qualify because we have the transfer entitlement program. So if a student is at a community college and they plan to transfer to a 4-year, they still could qualify for a Cal Grant through the transfer entitlement program. So I think students think that maybe if the first message that they get they didn't qualify, there's still opportunity for them to apply for a Cal Grant at the time that they're ready to transfer to a 4-year.
One last question. So if a student finds out that their grades weren't available and that was the reason why they didn't qualify, is it then their responsibility to go back to their high school and they can then obtain their transcript or grade and then submit it to you?
They can. So there's a paper GPA. There's one for non-SSN GPA and the other that the student can take that paper GPA and have the campus fill it out and send it to us. The campus can do that on an individual basis, key in the information for the student. And that's why we're really encouraging, give us all your GPAs so that we can make that determination and not leave any student out.
Thank you.
The only additional thing I would add here is that, and I failed to mention at the beginning of the presentation, is that the Commission's California DREAM Act application is being used both for institutional aid and for Cal Grant aid. And what we mean by institutional aid is the Board of Governors fee waiver program, the State University grant, and the University of California has their own institutional aid university grant program, and that there are some independent colleges and universities using that format as well. So the student is only filling out one universal application at no cost to the student. And we are working with the institutions, and you'll hear later from the institutional partners, they're using our application. So the SSN issue is only specific to the Cal Grant program. And the reason it's important, as I said earlier, was that the cost of education is more than the direct cost of tuition and fees. It's also cost related to books, transportation, and housing. And that's why it's so important.
You mentioned the constraints on your travel budget. I'm wondering, it seems like a lot of steps along this process can be labor intensive, even though there's a lot of technology involved. But with the numbers that you cited, I'm wondering what's the capacity to serve these students, especially if demand keeps growing?
Well, even during the recession, our office took steps to do as much training and webinars, and working with our partners in CASFA. At the last CASFA statewide conference, we did a number of sessions on the DREAM Act. So we tend to try to be creative and be as responsive as we can. The commission is only a staff of about 100 people, and we use technology quite a bit. But I think of our organization, we're very mission driven. Most of the folks that work for me have worked at an institution or have been student recipients of grant programs themselves. The commission is very mission driven. So I think our response is talk to us. We'll see what we can do. We'll work it out. I'm a deep believer in that change can happen if you work towards a goal together. And we've had a lot of success over the last years of trying to get as many institutions to turn the corner. When we started the non-SSN project, it was just with LA Unified School District. And we brought in, 16, 17 other districts with not additional augmentations or funds. We're just focused on getting the job done.
Really nice to hear you say mission driven. Great, that's great. Dr. Moore, anything? Thank you.
Thank you.
That'll bring us to the next segment of the agenda, and that is entitled How the DREAM Act Operates in Higher Education, presentations by Dean Colgio, Director of Student Financial Aid Services and Programs representing California State University. Rhonda Moore, Specialist, Student Services and Special Programs representing California Community Colleges. Ronald Johnson, Director of Financial Aid, UCLA, representing UC. Maureen McRae Goldberg, Director of Financial Aid for Occidental College, representing the Association of Private and Independent Colleges and Universities. And let me just say for everyone's benefit, it was a pleasure to meet many of you prior to the opening of this meeting. And it was great to realize we've got a lot of home-based talent in the room here. So thanks for giving us your business cards, and we will be calling upon you. So thank you. Dean.
Thank you, Trustee. And thank you, Chancellor and Trustee Hernandez as well for the opportunity to be here today. I do have a handout. Unfortunately, didn't have time to get it up here for the overhead, but I think most folks, do have it in hand. And the first parts I'm going to be talking about are really what we call phase one, which was beginning in January of this year, where students could apply for and receive our institutional aid programs. Phase two is kind of what we're in now, where they are potentially eligible for Cal Grants and the like. So we've been working on this and started this. I've been on it since the start, probably since early 2010, before it was actually signed into law. We were checking with legal counsel on what does this mean and scholarships, things like that. So very, very familiar with it. So when we got to the point where it was reality, and we were quite happy about that, we, as a system, we have 23 campuses, in case folks may not know. I know that's not as many as 112 community colleges, but we think it's a pretty big number. And so what we did was we have a central office, and we got volunteers and interested parties and formed a committee of financial aid directors and really started talking about how we're going to get the word out to prospective dreamers. What are some of the policy issues? For example, in that phase one, we are very cognizant of treating them similarly to California resident students. In other words, no better, no worse. Those probably aren't the best terms to use, but in other words, not to treat them more favorably or less favorably, but if a California resident student has to do X, then what would be kind of the equivalent for a Dream Act student, if appropriate. And then we identified what we felt were key stakeholders. Then going to the next slide, in the student outreach arena, especially for the CSU, we've never reported regularly on AB 540 students. The legislature's always been after us for that, and that's not something we purposefully tracked. And so when this came out, it's like, okay, we know they're out there. We have some kind of self-reported numbers and stuff. So where what are these kind of potential student populations? And so that was thinking, what advocacy groups on campus or offices that might be likely intersect, external organizations such as MALDEP, even CSAC and the like. Then in kind of promoting or getting the word out to these folks and the departments and offices that might be working with these students, we developed some kind of templates of email communication. So talking about the basics of AB 540 requirements, what the DREAM Act means, when it's effective, what might be available. A lot of our campuses created flyers, did a variety of workshops and presentations, and then all of our campuses have a web presence so that if someone in the EOP or the equity office is saying, oh, you might qualify for a state university grant, they have some place they can point them. Either having something in hand, or they just go onto the website or log into the portal. And these are ongoing, by the way. It's not like we're one and done. We're still refining them over time, and I think you'll see that in one of the later slides, some of the issues that are still out there. So the next slide, just quickly, a couple of sample outreach materials. One is the flyer. These are a little dated, but this again was in the early part of it. The one on the left, the flyer is from Northridge. The one on the right is Cal State Long Beach's website. As I mentioned earlier, in that phase one, kind of pre-Cal Grant, we wrestled with the issue of verification, and then we also talked about that in the DREAM Act group with the other segments and CSAC. And so out of it, the interest of fairness and equity, we felt that these students, some portion of them, should be subject to verification. Verification is basically the process where you're confirming the information that's reported, be it the income, household size, etc. In the broader sense, and giving up Financial Aid 101, where a student does the FAFSA, the federal application, the Department of Ed selects them for verification. So they come in already flagged and you say, okay, Dr. Moore, we're going to follow up with you. We need a copy of your tax transcript and confirm how many people are in your household size. With the DREAM application and the DREAM applicants, we had no such mechanism. So again, the equity and fairness, we arrived at doing a simplified version, or the simple version, so to speak, of federal verification, which is just asking for the required items. And then for that first year, each campus, when they had the applications received, they would select 20% of them randomly. Also, in looking at what the law said, that AB 130, 131, we felt that males would have to provide proof of registration of selected service. And coincidentally, moving into phase 2, which is now kind of the Cal Grant era, there is verification. CSAC selects them. I think it's at a lower percentage, 10% instead of 20%. And that males do have to provide confirmation of selected service. So a lot of our early policy work and consultation has led to kind of some of what's come about. Then getting back to campus stakeholders, I kind of alluded to this, but just go through it quickly. Trying to think of folks that may have contact with AB 540 students, admissions, outreach, advisors, various on-campus partners and advocates, diversity office, DOP, campus task forces, and then externally, CSAC, obviously, the other segments, organizations such as MALDEV, NILC, National Immigration Law Center, and others, as far as sometimes wrestling with policy issues or updating forms to make sure you have the appropriate language, things of that nature. There's a very heightened sensitivity around the issue as far as potential challenge for one side or the other. The next slide, statistics. This was our experience from what we call phase 1, so the pre-Cal Grant era. And so these numbers are from winter and spring of 2013. So as a system, the CSU had roughly 7,600 unduplicated applications received. We paid nearly 1,600 students received CSU or institutional grants of some sort, and that totals just under 4.5 million. We're just now getting the data from our campuses, so we don't have the final vetted numbers, but we're expecting them to be pretty close to this. And then lastly, in the last slide, probably most importantly, kind of lessons learned and areas for consideration, I think, especially for some of your campuses, and in the game a little later per se than perhaps we were. One of the things that is an ongoing issue, and I think Diana and Catalina mentioned this as well, is really educating the population. In other words, the population of students that may qualify, and the partners that work with them as well on the process. So there's still, a very strong mistrust in some cases, so a reluctance to provide personally identifiable information. And that includes things other than a social security number. So, name, address, how many people in your family, what was your income? Some people, actually a lot of middle income people that get offended by that. I've dealt with them when I worked at the UC, actually. To kind of make them understand and trust the process, that the information is not being shared widely and the confidentiality.
The understanding that there's various forms and deadlines involved. A lot of them do the DREAM application and think they're good. Not realizing, maybe there was supposed to be a GPA from the high school. Now the financial aid office is requesting something else. I'm supposed to have that in by May 1st. And then lastly, these communications may be coming from different parties. Financial aid office, student aid commission, admissions. The CSU, the admissions registrar is the one that does the AB 540 affidavit of confirmation process. So they're new to kind of this government bureaucracy process, and they're getting inundated with typically emails
Most of our campuses are doing all the electronic communications from, okay, the mission's off, I gotta do this form by this date. Financial aid's harassing me, I need a tax return. My parents didn't file a tax return, what do I do? So this is one we're really thinking carefully on how we continue our messaging, working with the partners and other offices out there that work with these students on trying to get them to understand and trust the process. I think another thing to note is, although the DREAM application itself and what CSAC has provided is great, and we are very appreciative of that, and it's the platform by which students apply for the assistance, the reality is, though, once that highway leads to your campus, it has to interface with your student system. So fortunately for us, 21 of our 23 campuses are PeopleSoft. But even in that case, we have a whole floor in our building that deals with PeopleSoft. And so they have to figure out how are we going to take this data that's coming in now from the DREAM application, load it into PeopleSoft so that our campuses may work it and determine eligibility and things of that nature. And so I just don't, I want to stress that it's not as simple, it's not plug and play, it's not putting in a USB thing and voila, there's a video. And the bullet's a little further down, but inherent in that is because they're not eligible for this full suite of aid programs, oftentimes that does require some level of manual intervention or review. In other words, they can't run through a normal packaging because they're not eligible for the federal programs. And so then you have to devise a special way to handle that and weed them out or things of that nature. Another thing we found, and I know CSAC is working on improving this, and it seems we go in the right direction, is multiple applications and duplicate records from these students. That will in one time save a part of it, that'll create a transaction to a campus. Then later there'll be another. And so kind of filtering through those and getting to the valid record that you're going to use to review and determine eligibility. Another is the DREAM application, and then typically, because they don't have a social security number, you do some sort of a match. In other words, we have Susie Smith, and then you pull a record in your student system, and it's Susie Smythe with an E on the end. So is that the same person? So that can be a challenge and will often require some level of editing and manual review to see if you have the right person. The other one we have found is a lot of students did the DREAM application, we had their stuff, and either they did not complete or in some cases did not meet the AB 540 requirements. So again, it's at a minimum a two-step process. If they're doing the Cal Grant, the third is the GPA, which was alluded to earlier. So we're going to be working on better messaging, making them understand, again, that you're still going to have to, with admissions or records or hours handled on that particular campus, validate and do that certification process regarding AB 540. Not only so they get their non-resident tuition waived, but also for the purposes of consideration for the state and institutionally. And then lastly, DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrival, which is a federal program signed by President Obama, has and continues to create a great deal of confusion. There was a big rush, and I think California had just huge numbers of folks applying for DACA and being granted it, and with that, in most cases, they are assigned a Social Security number for work purposes. And then in many cases, they would either call the Department of Education or maybe check with their local congressman, and they'd say, well, now you have a Social Security number, do the FAFSA. Which is not the best outcome, because in many cases what would happen, that record would be rejected because they were not a U.S. citizen or eligible non-citizen, and then the campus, and in many cases CSAC as well, would have a record they couldn't process. So we've been working very closely with the Commission and the other segments as far as trying to identify these students and get them on the right path, doing the DREAM Act versus the federal application. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
No, just
Thank you. Just in listening and going through this, it brings up a lot of considerations and that you've already identified. So I know certainly what you've already have experienced is going to be something that, and I'm sure we're going to hear from others that are going to give us some best practices and things to look at and as it relates to community college. So thank you.
Just a couple. One, when I saw the slide first, about 7,600 unduplicated applications received, but as I read, there's only 1,600 received.
Yes.
CSU grants. I wondered, gee, is that a normal ratio? But then as you went on with the presentation, kind of might have explained.
Yeah, the other factors are, and I think especially in phase one, you know, it was a watershed moment where folks could apply. It's kind of like, and so I think there was just a much larger volume, but a lot of these students that did the DREAM application, listed the Cal State campus, they weren't admitted there. We had no record of them. Some they weren't matriculated. In other words, they hadn't like either completed the process or even enrolled. So there were, I think, especially in phase one, there was just this kind of, there's something I can do. It's a benefit I might be able to obtain, and I'd like to go to a Cal State, and so they did it, right? Because it's free, you only require the time to do the application. And then the other factors, which I didn't mention, is for the students that for the verification and selective service, if they didn't turn in that information, then we can't proceed. So there was a number that didn't complete that process. So again, those are refinement things we try and work on the messaging and making sure that they understand that has to be done in order to proceed.
And then last question, regarding the key campus stakeholders, what's the overriding policy directive or guiding principle, or what's the mechanism that these different stakeholders gets the different stakeholders engaged in this effort or in this process?
I feel like, I know that's a tough question. And so I'm trying to think carefully. I mean, I think it would vary by campus, but the CSU as an institution has long been very supportive of, AB 540. From what I understand, we were kind of at the table and helping when that came about, and very supportive of the DREAM Act. So it's been kind of as an institutional value. It's inherent in the CSU. And then depending on the campus, but most of the kind of policy direction came from our division, Student Academic Services, so financial aid on the outreach side, things like that. And then we've done a lot of outreach with vice presidents of student affairs. We've talked about it when the presidents come to meet with the chancellor, et cetera. Sorry, that's kind of a weak answer. Right?
No, but that's
a tough question.
And it's helpful, and thank you. Rhonda.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I do not have a handout. I have to scribble along some notes. Not a lot of detailed information. The DREAM Act for the California community colleges has been a big deal. We are proud to have started the process early, being involved with the other segments and certainly with the California Student Aid Commission in rolling everything out. The programs that we're participating in right now via the DREAM Act, of course, are the Board of Governors Fee Waiver Program, EOPS, CARE, and CalWORKS, and there's a lot of flexibility amongst campuses. So there's 72 districts, 112 colleges. There's probably at least 100 different ways that that's being handled with EOPS, CARE, and CalWORKS. And then, of course, we have scholarship programs. And then the Student Aid Commission administered grants, Cal Grant A and B, the high school entitlement grants, transfer entitlement awards, and the Cal Grant C program. So The messaging timeline for us, students became eligible for the BOG fee waiver for terms starting after January 1st, 2013. We held back on communicating. It made a policy decision to kind of hold back communication until early fall, late summer, early fall 2012. We were worried that if we started promoting the DREAM app and BOG fee waiver eligibility too early, that students would think they were eligible in the fall for last year, and then register for classes and not be able to, not pay for it, thinking that they were going to have their fees waived. So we made the determination as a group to hold communications back. But then we went strong. The I Can Afford College campaign incorporated references to the DREAM Act in all of their materials and flyers. We have links to all of the Student Aid Commission materials also at the I Can Afford College website. So we started processing last fall fee waivers for the spring 2013, and of course we're continuing to process fee waivers for this year. The other a little bit different process for us at the community colleges. The Board of Governors fee waiver is required by law to have a short form application. It's 4 pages long, but it used to be a short form, I believe. So students to apply for the fee waiver, there's a couple of easier forms of application that don't require the DREAM app. So the first year we had a special application for Dreamers, and it was separate from the regular BOG fee waiver application. This year we've combined the application into one form. And then our students this fall have started receiving Cal grants. We have offered ongoing training starting in 2012 with all of the colleges. We've had in-person conference training, Chancellor's Office specific training, work with the association, and then of course all of our distribution listservs and whatnot. So we think we've had a good flow of information out to our colleges. We advised our colleges that one of the things that they should start doing is to identify the AB 540 students on their campuses. We do not gather at the system level. We do not gather information about who AB 540 students are. There is a report that once a year comes to us, and it asks the colleges to report a simple number. How many AB 540 students do you have? We're not identifying those students at the individual level. We have about 40,000 AB 540 students that were reported to us across the system. So if we add in Dean's 7,600 and the Student Aid Commission processed 29,000 applications, there's still a lot more students that we need to identify. So we would like our colleges to find and communicate directly with their current AB 540 students, and communicate to those in InReach. I spoke to some of the financial aid staff before the meeting. They held InReach and outreach tables and information sessions, but still students are a little bit hesitant, and often parents are a little bit hesitant still to apply for financial aid. So I would keep putting that message out, start working at your junior high and high school levels within the community to get the message out and get you know, more students involved in the process. Current concerns, many of our colleges had, Dean mentioned the fact that it was good that 21 of their 23 campuses are on PeopleSoft, so they were able to develop an automated solution for inputting the Dream app information, the data, and automating their processes. Most of our colleges did not have an automated solution to this, and are processing all or part of the applications manually. And I know you're concerned with policy, but operationally, the system as a whole really did struggle because the resources just weren't put into automating the system. So we probably have 112 colleges doing things 112 different ways at this point. So we need to work better to get automated processes and get everybody on the same track doing things the same way, especially with so many students attending more than one college now. It's going to be very confusing to them if they have to do it manually 3 different ways in your district. We have some concern, and we'll know better you know, over the next several weeks about Dreamers who may have trouble cashing disbursement checks. So the Cal Grant, the BOC fee waiver is just a BOC fee waiver. It's not usually resulting in any money. It's just a waiver of fees. But now that the Cal Grants are coming and it's time to actually disperse these funds, you know, we're having some discussions. The Student Aid Commission is having some discussions at the commission level also. So that may be something you keep your eyes and ears open for any troubles. Some suggestions there are some communities have worked with local credit unions and tried to establish relationships for their students to be able to cash checks or disbursements. And I think that's all I have. We have a number of community colleges that are continuing to sit on the work groups with the Student Aid Commission, work through issues, and fine-tune program. I think we're doing a pretty good job at it. So happy to answer any questions.
I just have just mostly just a comment is interesting about what you mentioned as far as operational, and we've had some previous discussions about that. Is that once we come up with a policy, that it'll be interesting to hear what the presidents have to say, because then that'll be their opportunity to say that these are some of the limitations of what things we need, or what kind of resources are going to be needed. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
The local audience will appreciate this comment. Thank you for pointing out the operational concerns, but acknowledging our policy perspective in this.
It needs to go hand in hand, I think.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Moore.
Rhonda, I just had one quick question. Just a little more clarity. You had talked about the need to automate. And so if you had to, for those of us who would have to deal with implementation at some sort of level, can you just speak very, very briefly to what that should entail for a campus?
Sure. I'll try. You guys can look me on the back of the head if I'm getting this wrong. So ideally, your aid office would go into CSAC's website, open up web grants, there's a special page for them, log on, press the button, and it would find this week's file. And then they'd go onto their own system in the financial aid office, and they'd say, okay, system, go find this data file and load it. So there might be 1,000 students on the data file. Loads into the system, and it checks all of the other eligibility criteria. Is the student enrolled? has admissions marked them as AB 540? Are they making progress? All of those conditions, the system would do that checking. And out would spit a letter to the student or communication, oh, congratulations, you're eligible for the bog fee waiver. At our campuses right now, when they log into the Student Aid Commission system, what most of our campuses are doing is pressing a button, printing a list of 1,000 students, then having to take the list of the 1,000 students and key in their, somehow try to find their student ID because there's no SSN to match it. So they've got to go on the system, try to find the student, then build from scratch a financial aid record for the student to process the bog fee waiver. Does that sound horrible? Yeah.
That sounds challenging, yeah. That sounds very challenging.
Well, this will be, like I said, interesting because I know that we have like our banner system, and then it brings in the whole thing of what do these systems continue to meet our needs, and are they? And I'm just it brings into question then about how do we offer this kind of support, and I'm sure we'll get the.
Are you all on Banner?
Yes.
Okay, so Banner, I should have looked this up before I came down here and visited with you guys. Banner is the one system that was automated. So you probably have less of that problem. Sorry for the scare, guys.
Okay.
But DataTel, which the majority of our campuses have across the state, did not automate, and our PeopleSoft schools are not automated.
Oh, great.
So problem solved for you.
Thank you.
Kudos to district and college foresight in that arena. Okay. Ron Johnson, welcome.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you. I think the theme clearly has been communication, and communication is key in making sure the audiences that we want receive the information that they need. And our philosophy at the University of California has been to meet the students where they're at. And that's particularly the case at our campus at UCLA. What we would do is we would meet with the student organizations. We would go to the students to make sure that we are addressing their particular needs, and we are addressing their needs in the comfort of the environment that they feel most comfortable with. I don't know that I need to go through all of this. We've talked about the timeline for the DREAM Act and AB 540. And one of the things that we did at UCLA when the AB 130 was passed is that we immediately developed an application so that we would have a consistency with our other students who were applying for scholarships. And because we were not sure when a financial application would be available through the state, we began using that application initially before the California DREAM application became available. So we had some students that did our application, and then we had others that switched over to the California DREAM application. The next chart basically shows the impact of the DREAM Act on our students and the amount of institutional aid scholarship that was available to our students. And one of the things I can say is that this opened up immense resources for our students who heretofore have really, really struggled. Students were dropping out for a quarter and coming back. Students were working inordinate amount of hours in order to generate resources so they could cover fees. Once the AB 131 went through, that allowed students to be participants in all of our institutional grant programs, the UCLA and UC Blue and Gold programs, which helped to meet their full fees. So we were very, very pleased with the ultimate passage of that law. And then, of course, as we look at the 2013-14 year, immense increase in eligibility for our students. 1,200 new students filed the DREAM application. 1,300 continuing students filed the DREAM application. Our preliminary estimates at this particular juncture is that students will receive $11 million in Cal grants and $25 million in university grants and scholarships. And 90% of our DREAM applicants receive an average grant of about 16,000 students, many more receiving higher grants based on their need. We also are anticipating a large number of students that will qualify for DACA, and we have been outreaching to our student community related to those opportunities. We have engaged our human resources department. We've engaged all of our departments on campus. One of the questions that you asked was, how do you engage everyone? How do you make them as committed as you are? Well, our coming down from our president, President Udolph, is one way, but the other way is going up. And again, that's meeting with our students and engaging our students. What we have done in order to assure that students are fully aware of the opportunities available to them is we've used just about every mechanism that we can to reach out to students. That's going into the community, that's developing flyers, that's, as an example, in the next slide, we even sent out information to every single applicant who applied for UC to assure that they understood that there are resources available to them. And the fact that they applied, we did not want to, at that particular juncture, lose those students. So we wanted to make sure that we hit them over the head with a hammer if we had to make sure that they were aware that resources were available. In addition, as I said, we were engaging student groups who were also engaging these students. So we were doing a full press outreach to our students. What has worked well? Well, I have to say that the CSAT commitment to making the DREAM application a functional application has been very key. And without the committed and dedicated dedication of the California Student Aid Commission, this would have been a tough road for students. Imagine students having to fill out multiple applications to get institutional aid and to get Cal Grant. So without the CSAT's commitment and responsiveness, this could have never happened in terms of what's happening now and what will happen in the future. And generally, we've received positive feedback from our students who appreciated the fact that we went the extra mile to make them aware of these resources. Certainly there have been challenges. I think Dean mentioned earlier that the way you communicate information has to be very thoughtful, because we're dealing with a population that has great sensitivity because of the immigration issues that we face in this country currently, which hopefully will change. So we have tempered warning messages and all sorts of things that would normally be put out there as deterrents for students committing fraud. We have linked the CSAC segments to the student records, implementing an identifier other than the Social Security number. We have provided clear instructions for DACA. At UCLA and at many of our campuses, we have organizations and departments that are specifically responsible for support services for undocumented students. At UCLA, it's our Bruin Resource Center. We work very closely with that organization, and they have a plethora of information regarding DACA and how students can go through that process. We do workshops with our students, both entering and continuing students, again, to make sure that we have them as educated as and informed as possible. And then clearly, we need to make sure that we continue to enhance our instructions so that students are not completing the FAFSA when they should be completing the DREAM application, and or vice versa. We have also dealt with the same issues that many campuses deal with as it relates to systems. Our system is a homegrown system, so we had to do a lot of manipulation to make our system work for us and to get the information that we need. Other campuses have different systems, and they had to go through the same routine. But the point is that our commitment to making this work has been overarching, and that is what has been helpful to our students succeeding.
Thank you. Just before I call on you, thank you for responding to my earlier question about engagement, and thanks for stressing the focus on commitments as well. Any questions or comments?
Just thank you for being here and taking the time to put this together. In regards to your colleagues at the other campuses, do you is there a similar discussion, or do what you see from UC in general?
Our directors and individuals who engage with DREAM Act students, we meet on a bi-weekly basis. We discuss these issues so that we are taking mutual and uniform approaches to assisting the students. The things that we do at UCLA are mirrored on many of our other campuses. The philosophy of meeting the students where they're at, I think, is very, very key, and that philosophy persists throughout the UC system.
Thank you.
Thanks again. Maureen McRae Goldberg.
Good afternoon. I am Maureen McRae Goldberg. I'm the Director of Financial Aid at Oxnard College, a small private liberal arts college in Eagle Rock, in Los Angeles, nestled between Glendale and Pasadena. I was the Associate Dean for Financial Aid at Glendale Community College for 5 years prior to Occidental, so I still have a lot of friends, I hope, and my heart is still very much with community college students, so it's a pleasure to come here today representing the Association of Independent Colleges and Universities in California. AICCU, as we are known, represents 75 unique private nonprofit WASC accredited universities and colleges in the state. We serve approximately 176,000 students, including about 28,000 Cal Grants, which is about 6% of the total Cal Grant population. The Cal Grant program is a foundation of the historical connection between private education in California and state education. The original scholarship, California Scholarship, was created actually to allow California residents to attend private institutions when fees at the public institutions were non-existent or very, very low. This allows California students to have a choice in where they go to college or higher education. Being able to go to a private one is one that we thank the state of California for still allowing low-income students to do. I do want to give you just a little bit of information about Occidental College in general. We are the biggest mishmash of colleges you could ever imagine. When I said 75 unique institutions, I truly meant that. When we get together and talk, everybody is doing things differently. Everybody's on different computer systems, and policies are all different. There is no central processing for institutions in the private sector. We do use the FAFSA for financial aid, and we do use the Common App for admissions, and we do use another financial aid document called the Profile to distribute our own institutional money. I don't go into a lot of the differences, but we are a horse of a different color. Okay, I like to think this is the purple one in Oz, but that's the colleges. Occidental College is unique in a lot of ways. For many, many years, we held the distinction of having the greatest representation of low-income and ethnically diverse and underrepresented students of any selective college in the country. We are about number 3 now because some people with more money than us stepped into our party. So we still are very proud of the students that we serve. We have 20% of our enrollment receives Pell Grants. So you can see an enrollment of about 2,000 students. That's a large number of students that come from disadvantaged and low-income backgrounds. In addition, we do pledge to meet the full demonstrated need of all of our students, including undocumented students that we have admitted to the college over the last 20 years. I've been the aid administrator there for 16, and it's been my pleasure to have undocumented students and to assist undocumented students through their 4 years at Occidental. This year was the first year we did not have an undocumented student in our entering class, and I blame the DREAM Act, because I think for the first time, Dreamers had options, and options is what they should have. California should provide those options, and if our dreamer wanted to go to UCLA or wanted to go to UC Merced instead of Occidental, then Occidental, just because we give them financial aid, shouldn't be their only option. So I actually see the DREAM Act working for students by enabling choice. With the passage of SB 131, the state provided AB 540 students the ability to use their Cal Grant awards in all segments. So we would be able to have a dreamer on my Occidental campus, but as I said, this year we did not. Prior to the implementation of 131, the development of the DREAM application, there was no statewide policies or procedures that had private colleges interacting with undocumented students. AB 540 is a definition for public education and how you assess fees on students that are residents in California but are undocumented for federal purposes. Unlike the public segments, when the new law passed, the DREAM Act passed, we had to create new ways to deal with the dreaming students that were coming in Most of our campuses have handled this on a one-on-one basis, with the exception of some of the bigger schools like Stanford, which you have a lot of students at. Most of our schools are smaller. Occidental is 2,000 students, but you have students with enrollments of under 100 to as high as Stanford's, which I believe is in the 24,000 range at this point. But we do have to handle them on a case-by-case basis, because just like the computer systems of the other schools in the public side, our systems did not step up and create ways to track these students in new and different ways. I am fortunate, as are most of the Claremont colleges and the selective colleges in the state, to have what's called the PowerFade system, which is more user-friendly than some of the other systems, because it's created directly for financial aid offices and is not a platform for the rest of the campus. It allows us to be a little more able to manipulate. According to data recently provided by the Commission, there are 216 Dreamers currently receiving the Cal Grant at an independent college or university. Prior to the DREAM Act, undocumented students could apply to and be admitted to a private institution. Some private institutions had the ability to meet their full demonstrated need with institutional funds, as no state or federal funds could have. We've been doing that at Occidental, and a student who attends our college would receive a $63,000 financial aid package, of which there would be $3,000 in loan, and the rest would be institutional grants and scholarships. So we're actually looking forward to having some Dreamers to help offset that incredible cost. I will tell you that the students that have come to Occidental College who are undocumented, and I so much prefer the word Dreamers, who have come have been the tops of their class, the valedictorians at their high school. It is a selected campus, it's difficult to get into, and they have performed incredibly. I have watched some of them go through in the years that are there. They've gone on to graduate school, and some of them are doing really incredible things for the country as a whole. We were very happy with the passage of the DREAM Act and the ability to use a FAFSA-like document for these students. We had to find new ways to identify them. They would sometimes self-identify on an admissions application, but not always. Or some schools would require that they go through our international student programs offices. So admissions, financial aid, and the registrar's offices have had to coordinate to try to identify these students and to see if they were eligible for the DREAM Act. With regard to the implementation and the processing of students, we now need to verify AB 540 status, which is something we've never had to do before. The majority of the primary stages of the implementation were related to identification of who the students actually were, so trying to find them if they were on our campus. Fortunately for us, most of them had previously been identified because they tend to need financial aid to begin with, and so they've received institutional forms of aid. We do have to manually review and process these awards, but the numbers are low enough right now that is not an institutional burden. Financial aid administrators, I found in the years that I've been here as a whole, only care that students have access. They don't necessarily care where they're from. They just want to educate students and get them through the process, and that has been consistent across the private schools as well. There is also a lack of understanding among AB 540 students about the Pell Grant entitlement. They think that it's only for students who recently graduated, so some of the word is not getting out to others. There was a delay because of the paper application, but we believe the Commission will take care of some of those delays with the introduction of the of an automated system. Despite all of these challenges, we applaud the alternative application, because not only has it allowed us to determine Pell Grant eligibility for our students, but really has been the first document we can use to truly determine institutional eligibility for our students in an across-the-board fair manner. So that has been a little boost to us. Our institutions continue to get challenges from AB 540 students. Our costs are very high. We're not subsidized in any way. Very few have huge endowments. We have a few notables in the state that do, but most of us rely on tuition revenue to award our enrolled students, including undocumented students. And therefore, federal aid is extremely important. The access to the federal work study and the federal loan programs also become very important. We want to stress that we do work very closely with the DREAM students that are on campus to try to assist them in getting outside scholarships by assisting them with giving them the resources necessary to do online searches for scholarships. A lot of companies that don't have the federal rules and state rules and the limited resources do award scholarships to DREAM students, and by pulling all of those resources together can often make it possible for them to attend a private school. I want to thank you for the opportunity to share the perspective of the private and independent colleges. We look forward to continuing to work with the Commission. Our people up in Sacramento have been involved in all the calls, and Diane and her staff have very nicely talked with us somewhat separately because it's a different animal than the publics are, but we've been in contacts through AICCU and key aid administrators in our system working with the Commission, and we look forward to continuing that and to continue to serve as a pipeline for your students.
Thank you, and thank you for the work you do. And I should have thanked everyone else that presented. Thank you for the work that you do, and thank you for your presence here today. Again, this has been some great information. I don't have any follow-up questions for you, Trustee Hernandez.
Only that we were at a community presentation last night, and the Chancellor was there, and the board members, and we had a speaker from Cal Lutheran University, the president of Cal Lutheran University, and he really shared with us some thoughts that I probably knew but really hadn't thought about in regards to our private institutions and the role that they play in. And so we're pretty well, we got a little tutorial last night, and so thank you, because our private institutions play a major role for all of our students in our community. So thank you for being here, and to everyone.
Yes, following up on that, the demand for education is enough for all segments to address, and I do appreciate your comment about the Dreamers should have choices, and it seems to be working from your experience. Thank you. With my colleagues' indulgence, I think we'll power through the student component here, the student perspective. And thank you. I don't see her, or I cannot see her. Debbie, is she in the room? Are all the students here that are going to be part of the student perspective?
How you doing? I'm actually here substituting for Debbie. My name is Josh Reed. I have a couple students here.
And after the presentation of the student perspective, then we'll just recess for a quick break, and then bring on the next segment, implementation of the Green Act.
Or do you want to do a break right now?
I would rather respect your time. I mean, that's why I'd rather have you present now. Unless...
I mean, because I feel like they've been sitting down for quite a while, so maybe they could use a fast break or something.
You guys want to take a recess?
We're good. We're used to sitting at meetings, so let's just power through it. But thank you for asking.
Okay, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves. Actually, this is Oscar. He went to go get something for his throat a little bit here. And he's actually the founder for the Dream Act Club here at Oxnard College. He transferred to UCLA. And he's here to speak up on what probably his point of view of being a Dream Act student is.
Introduction, right?
I'm Cynthia Montero, and I'm also a student from Oxnard College. I transferred to Cal State Channel Islands. In a form of DACA do seeking as well, if that helps.
Good afternoon. My name is Francisco. I'm myself and actually not a dreamer, but I'm the vice president of the student government here, so I'm here on their behalf. A good amount of our students here are undocumented, so I'm here on behalf of them.
And once again, Josue Ruiz, I'm Secretary of ASG, affiliated for Debbie Guzman. Thank you for coming to Oxnard College.
Okay, so like they said, my name is Oscar. I'm actually Oxnard College alumni. I transferred to UCLA in fall 2011. And I was I wouldn't say founder, but like co-founder. Cynthia here next to me, she also helped me start up the Dream Club here on campus. Dreamers Reaching Education, Aspirations, and Motivation. When we started this club here on campus, I think like, I honestly, I didn't know this event was happening today. I came in today for my orthodontist appointment and get my braces removed. And I texted Cynthia and I'm like, hey, do you want to have lunch? And she was like, I actually have this event to go to. She's like, you should come along. And I'm like, all right. So I'm thankful to be here.
I hope this is less painful than
yeah,
appointment experience.
definitely. So I think after hearing everyone else, I think I have an idea of what this event is regarding. I think as a transfer student, and especially as someone who went into a four-year institution before California Dream Act got implemented, AB 131, I think I can speak from some experience. So when I went in 2011, I had to come up with $14,000 in private scholarship money, which I did, to pay off my first year in tuition. My second year there in 2012, that's when AB 130 was implemented. And because like one of the presenters here said that UCLA, we actually had a SADAS form, which is an individual application for undocumented students to apply for institutional private aid. And I actually got confused and I ended up just filling that one up, and I delayed, or I didn't even bother to do the California Dream Act one because I assumed that one was going to account for the whole year. So that was one of my problems, is just the confusion of like, sometimes, at least in the beginning, the institution had their own application, and then on the side you still have a California Dream Act application. So I think that was one of the issues with me. And then in addition to that, I didn't know that you could, on the California Dream Act application, you can file, or you can put that your parents will file taxes. And so I assumed that you must have already had your taxes done in order to input that information. So my parents actually, they're the type of people that delay on the taxes. So they actually do them like 2 months after the deadline. So for me, it was like, I was trying to be like, hey, you need to do taxes early this year, like California Dream Act application, free money, like come on. And they didn't, and so I, under the idea that, oh, you needed to have done your taxes before you even apply, I ended up not applying for the first batch of like institutional aid. So I actually ended up taking a quarter off winter, and then I used the leftover money I had from scholarship money to pay for the end of my second year there. And then this year, I actually, I did that California Dream Act application, but because of I wasn't eligible for a California Dream Act, a Cal Grant, because I wasn't, I guess, transfer entitlement Cal Grant. I wasn't entitled to it because you're only entitled if you went to community college 2012 to 20 academic year 2012 and 2013, and I went in 2011, so I'm no longer, I guess, entitled to a transfer grant. So I didn't get a Cal Grant, but I did get the institutional aid. So at UCLA, they have a Dream Grant. So that's pretty much paying for all of my tuition and expenses. And like someone mentioned, there is a gap in financial need. Like, I have to sleep with 5 other people in a 1-bedroom apartment, which we call the cabin, and I pay $234 $239 a month, just be in a setup where the 3 girls are in the room and the 3 boys are in the living room, just because Westwood, like rentals, apartments, it's so expensive. And because of the gap, I mean, it's a privilege to be able to live off campus or close enough. So there is that. So I just wanted to add to that. But I feel like, one of the things I wanted to point out, as a co-founder here of the Dream Club at Oxnard College, we started up a high school mentoring group, which we called the Oxnard College Dream Team Academy. And we actually had 38 high school students from all over the Oxnard Union High School District. And there's 6 high schools. We only had students from 5 of them. We never got anyone from Camarillo. But the thing about that is that some of those students didn't even know that the Ventura College Promise existed before even California Dream Act. Like for students who didn't before financial aid and they don't even know. So it's like they didn't even know that you could do the Ventura College Promise. They were eligible to have their first year paid there. Some people didn't know of a program that existed here at Oxnard College, the OC Scholars program. They didn't know that they were eligible, like undocumented students could also apply for that, and they actually paid their 2 years here and actually got a $300 stipend each semester too. And another thing is that some people didn't even know what 8540 is. Like we actually started the Oxnard College Dream Team project, and what we pretty much did is we partnered with the migrant program, because I'm actually a migrant student too. I pretty much got raised in that whole program throughout my life here. And so I collaborated with Lupe Castillo, which is the director, and we did presentations at their symposiums, at their parent conferences, and then we did some presentations at some local high schools. And the thing with that was that some parents, they were still in the mindset that their kids couldn't even go to college. So for a lot of them, it wasn't even about financial aid accessibility as a problem, but it was of oh, I didn't even know 8540 existed. Or that they were able to pay in-state tuition if they met the requirements, right? So I feel like right now, with the whole trying to get the word out and trying to have these students in our community aware and families aware that there is that possibility, that there is that available funding now, it's just as hard, I guess, because it's some of these people don't even know what 8540 is or that, what those requirements are. So, and then I think something to keep in mind too is that some students aren't DACA eligible. So, and then some students, each student's situation is very different. And I might be getting less money because according to the financial aid rubric, how much your parents make a year, we might just make a little bit more. And so I think that being aware, I guess we have to be conscious that sometimes we might go around and say, well, the high school's job is to put up these resources for them to know about financial aid and about these resources. But sometimes, I guess sometimes people, professionals, have seen it, working with, collaborating with some other administrators where they tend to roll the ball around. And I think it's if I, as a, alumni here, I remember the mission statement and our commitment to students, and well, where is our commitment to students when we, I guess at the end of the day, we need to ask ourselves, what is it that we're doing for our students here to be able to get this information out, and not just, as much as we would like, because we're low on budgets and stuff like that, we would like to think that the high schools or the middle schools or all the education system before that, did all this information and resources, and all the parents and kids know about these resources. It just doesn't happen in a lot of the cases. So I think that there needs to be more, I guess, marketing or recruitment in terms of the resources that are available. Because even then, the VCCF Foundation, right, the one that awards scholarships for Ventura County, it has the Social Security before financial aid. I remember the first time I applied as a high school student, it had a Social Security box right there. And so many of my peers were like, oh, I'm not applying for it because it asks for social. But I called one time and then they're like, no, you can still apply. So I'm just like, oh, well, that's very misleading because I wasn't about to apply just because I thought it required one, you know? And I think that when I was helping all these 38 high school students through our program, all of them got either, a scholarship from the Oxnard College Foundation. Some of them became Ulster Scholars. Some of them went to Ventura College for the Ventura Promise. And 2 of them, because of family reasons, they just didn't continue on. So I feel like there needs to be that, I think what I learned from that is that a lot of these students, like even some of the college mentors that I had, as I paired them up with a college student here, some of them didn't even know that they could apply to the foundation scholarships from each institution, right? And I was like, what do you mean you don't know? Like, I applied last year and I got 4. So they were like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. I didn't know that was available. So I feel like even then it's like, so where's, I guess, the people in charge of the foundation scholarships, what are they doing to recruit, or why is it that these students don't know about this information, or where's that gap that I guess the information just disconnects and it doesn't get to them, right? I think we need to be knowledgeable and aware of that, and definitely, something at UCLA, like Mr. Johnson said, we have the Bruin Research Center, and they actually have an undocumented support coordinator in that, specifically for that, and we actually have like undocumented welcome day reception for all the incoming students, and I feel like maybe, just like they identify those students that are in that status and to try to target them. I feel like, when we have these applications about, coming into Oxnard College or Ventura, that we can also identify those students and maybe have something similar where we have them come in, or an invitation is sent out to them in terms of like, okay, let's figure out if you know all these resources and everything that's aware to you. Or even when we have, I know Oxnard College, Ventura College goes out to high schools as well, right? So why is it that we're not putting out that information there as well? Or why is it that sometimes even when we had the financial aid component, they wouldn't talk about, oh, well, undocumented students can also apply for the Ventura Promise, or they could also apply for the OC Scholarship Program. So I feel like we definitely need to do a little bit more from that part as a community college district to get that information out and those resources to students.
For only recently becoming aware of this forum, thank you very much for all that insight and information. Thank you. And I'm sorry, could you please repeat your name?
Cynthia.
Cynthia, thank you.
Okay, first of all, I want to thank you all for hosting this and for having this event for Dreamers. And we need more of these, and like how he mentioned, and basically the key of all this is having the information out there, having this information available for people who don't know. In reality, like he said, I was with him back in the migrant program when we did a presentation to parents. Honestly, when it comes to money, it doesn't matter. Honestly, what they want is, I want options for my children. Money is no obstacle. It is, but for somehow, some way they will get it, just for the purpose of the child having opportunities to better educate themselves and be a better person. It's only having information to say, yes, your kid could go beyond high school, your kid could go on beyond community colleges and whatnot. So the keynote for everything is just having information out there, and for it to start from early ages, maybe from junior high, for the information just to be there, available for parents and for students. In my case, the way I paid for my education is scholarships and working. I work a lot. Where there's a will, there's a way, right? And before I received the DACA beneficiaries of having a social security card, it's going under the table, working jobs, two jobs at once, and full-time student. That's what helped me. But now that this is available to us, life is a lot easier, I can say. So from my perspective, everything is easier, and I am getting more informed, and the key is to reach out, to have motivation and dedication to go out there and look for what you want, and to just look for the information, and like I said, just ask for it and demand it at some times. And other than that, that's all I could say for now.
I'm sorry, where are you? You're formerly an Oxnard College student, and now where are you?
My dream is to be a nurse. Before the DACA came into play, I had to change my major in order to kind of receive a higher degree of education, because that's my dream. That's something that my family would always say to me. So it doesn't matter what you want, but you have to go to a university and receive a degree, and then you can do whatever you like. So in my household, I had no option. I had to go to a university. So I changed my major for psychology. So now that I can be a nurse, I came back to finish my prerequisites to become a nurse. So now my goals is to become an RN and get a BA in psychology. So I'm doing both, Oxnard and CI.
And do you have brothers and sisters?
Yes, I have a citizen sister. She's younger than me.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Thank you.
Hi again. I'm not a dreamer, but I am here on some of their behalf. I work with the Dream Club here, and they're very motivating. They're hungry. They just want education. You know, this isn't. And yeah, they just want an education. I think I'm just repeating here, but the students are generally unaware, in my experience, of AB 540 and these grants and scholarships that they are eligible for. I think maybe just again, you guys are doing a great job. The board of trustees, the administration's here, President Duran, the faculty, they're very supportive of the Dreamers, but I guess just market stuff better and let the Dreamers know that there are resources that are available to them and they can get an education. But again, thanks.
Thank you. Sway.
Hello, how you guys doing? My name is Josue. I'm going to share something that I have experienced as walking through helping DreamAct students. What I have seen and I have experienced that we need to incorporate with the junior highs, elementary schools, and the high schools. So the colleges could actually meet them there so they can meet the communities around the areas. As we can see, we have DreamAct parents that don't have transportation. They're scared to drive. There's a lot of checkpoints out here. They accidentally get arrested, put into jail because they don't have a driver license, etc. I've been noticing that we need to do a lot of marketing out there in the community. That'd be a great point to do. I have met students that I walk them through the process. I learned with it. I'm a student here, to get them into the bog waiver, try to get them into the DreamAct benefits. We got high school students that want to start college instead of going to high school college because they're wasting their time there and the atmosphere is not positive for them. I have had fourth graders that come here looking for me because they want tutoring because their schools don't have the flexibility to tutor them because their parents are not available. And their DreamAct atmosphere family members, which if we stay united together, we can actually build a nice wheel for the future Dreamers here. A lot of them are gun shy. We had a forum last semester. Mr. Duran hosted it here, and I met with them. I spoke to them, my point of view. I was born and raised here. Fortunately, we're the first generation. And some Dreamers look at it that they're being entrapment, that they're just going to give out information and that wasn't going to function and they were going to all get deported. Some Dreamers lost their parents because they got deported and it's one household income, the mom, so they have to drop out of school, work under the table. And that's kind of a hard situation for the Dreamers, so that's why at the beginning we probably don't see a lot of numbers. But if we look at their situation financially and their households, a lot of them live renting a room. So when they ask them, we need the household income, they get confused. Why? Because there's two families that are registered under the residence. So how do they do it? So what they do, they close the application, drop out of school and go to work. So I think we should, as a county, get together and start doing some workshops at the local elementary schools, high schools, and junior high, because that's where everybody lives close by. When you have them come to the college, they get gun shy because they have a lot of checkpoints around this area. I know that because I work with law enforcement doing that, and I see the process. So they cannot come over here. They will not come over here. So they'll just tell the kids, you know what, go get a job. Sorry. That's what I got to share with you guys.
Yes, sir.
Like I say again, undocumented students aren't jumping at the chance to advertise their legal status, so they're not gonna ask. You know, you have to tell them, you have to let them know, because oftentimes, you know, they're not searching for it because they are scared.
I don't have any questions. I want to thank you, because I mean, we hear a lot of information, but to hear the reality of what is one of course, getting out into the community level and building trust within the community. So we have a couple of things that we need to do at the same time. At the same time, looking at how to, once we identify a student, how do we get them through and get them through the process. But then there's the other part of the community and starting to develop and breaking down some barriers that are perceived, as simple as the Social Security, putting a Social Security on a piece of paper. So I think what you bring up today is a very valuable point. I think having it's probably something, a reality, or some of the issues that our administrators are already familiar with, but I'm sure they'll, in putting all this together, what you brought forward, and give us something that will help the board provide support for making sure that we have the resources to do that. Thank you.
I want to thank you also. I mean, our purpose for existing in our roles as a board of trustees is you, the students. And so you've provided some very compelling information about your experiences, which I think is an important follow-up to some of the information we heard before you, and will be very helpful, I'm sure, in discussion and information that we hear in the next segment after a quick break. I just want to make one additional comment. I mean, many things in life are so interrelated, and Trustee Hernandez mentioned this forum that we both attended last night, but we also, full board of trustees, had a joint meeting with the county school board of trustees. And Ramon Flores, I'm not going to dare attempt to speak for you, but I was pleased to hear some of his personal comments and those of his colleagues where their organization and our organization are looking for ways to work collaboratively for the benefit of our mutual clients, which are the students. So this is just that very first step in this immediate process, but I think all of you that have been here and participated have given us a good foothold on the issue, and I look forward to things to come. Trustee Hernandez.
I just want to add, we have a lot of great, excellent outreach programs that are already existing. We have excellent staff, and I think that and also in regards to Trustee Perez mentioned Trustee Ramon Flores, who's very active even outside his role and involved in the community, and could also there's existing organizations, parent organizations, a lot of Latino families within the districts already meeting and already talking about other issues. So it's not like we would have to go out and reinvent anything. It's just going in and engaging. And I'm sure all our staff are already familiar with that. So once we go through the process and come up with our proper policy and how it is, and I'm sure they're going to find creative ways to do that. And also continue to reach out to all of you. I'm very proud of all of you for what you do. And you bring a valuable asset to all your friends and colleagues and students. So thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we'll take a break and reconvene at approximately 3:15 by my watch. Thank you.
I'm Bernie Luskin. I'm the president at Moore Park College, which is the, I guess it's the spaceship Moore Park campus because of the observatory, so I get to be the Captain Kirk of Moore Park campus. And we have our Spock, so instead of speaking to you, because I've been here just a couple of weeks, I'm going to introduce Iris Ingram, who is, as you actually know, the Spock of the Moore Park campus, and knows all the details, has overseen the implementation of the DREAM Act program, and can tell you how it goes. So Iris, why don't you Explain it to them.
Thank you.
She needs a little emblem on her.
Well, that's right. We're going to get her a little hat.
Glad it makes any cracks about my ears, it's on. Thank you. I won't go through what you already know. Everyone knows what the DREAM Act is, given based upon what previous presenters have indicated, as well as how it is implemented generally throughout the state. I am going to talk about how the DREAM Act is implemented on the ground in the individual campuses within the Ventura County Community College District. As asked in previous information from us, there isn't a district-wide plan per se. Each of the 3 campuses has taken the DREAM Act and implemented it in their own ways based on the needs of their own communities and with their own resources, but we are all following the same guidelines, principles, and we all collaborate together. But what I do want to do is run through some of the aspects that may be slightly more unique to Moore Park as opposed to our sister campuses. I'm going to use fiscal year 2011-2012 data because it mirrors and is consistent with the data you've gotten thus far with the master plan. Although I do have some updated numbers for the current year, but I don't want to mix apples and oranges, so I'm going to stick primarily to the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2012, where our student head count was just over 20,000, almost 21,000. The breakdown, as you see, 2.1% African American, American Indian, Native American, less than 1%, Asian Pacific Islander, 9.4%, Hispanic students represent about 25% of our student population. Students who identify as multi-ethnic, a little over 4%, and then non-Hispanic whites being 57%. And as you're aware, the DREAM Act covers students of all ethnicities. The predominant number also at Moore Park being students who self-identify as Hispanic. We also have a large contingent of Asian students who also fall in that category. The chart basically is a snapshot of who at Moore Park College receives financial assistance or financial aid. And it's a little hard to read, but essentially of the students who were enrolled in the current year, or last year, about 35% of the enrolled students received financial aid in some form or another. Now, even though our head count dropped from last year to the current year, the number of students receiving some form of financial aid more than doubled. It's up to almost 84%. Even though we have fewer students, they tend to be needier. But that's financial aid in all forms. And the chart shows how that aid is arrayed. It's typically a combination of sources, BOG waivers being the largest number, grants, and we're talking primarily about Cal Grants, Pell, and the other federal grants for which DREAM Act students are not eligible, so those numbers are not going to add up to 100% because students often receive multiple sources of grants, and our DREAM Act students would only be eligible for both the BOG waiver, versions of the Cal Grant, and certain private scholarships. How are we complying with the DREAM Act at Moore Park? Because this is primarily a financial aid driven process, it is our financial aid office in collaboration with our counseling staff, our categorical programs, EOPS, CalWorks, TANF, and Access. They all work together to reach AB 540 eligible students. We're looking at those students who are listed as type 7 eligible. Now again, that's students who we have identified as being eligible. That's a smaller cohort of students who actually apply, and then an even smaller cohort of students who actually complete the application. For all the explanations that previous speakers have identified we're having the same issues and are using different techniques to reach those students. What we are doing is that our financial aid office has a dedicated web page within its website just for the DREAM Act. We have our own set of frequently asked questions. We have developed video. We also use on our campus, along with the other two campuses, what's known as Financial Aid TV. So it's a series of videos that walk students through a number of different processes, the DREAM Act being one of them. And we also have our financial aid staff all fully trained and cross-trained to work with students however way it's needed. I think someone mentioned about you meet the student where they are. So we have follow-up, in person, phone, email, whatever works within the constraints of our resources. We also spend a great deal of time targeting our outreach to the 17 feeder high schools for Moore Park College. And again, that's in collaboration with our college outreach coordinator, our campus EOPS staff, our CalWorks staff, and we meet routinely and regularly with our high school counselors, and we're in the process of creating additional workshops for counselors to help them understand what the provisions of the DREAM Act are and how to identify additional students who would be eligible. We have specially designed flyers. I did not incorporate them into the PowerPoint, but I can also send them to you separately, because we have a whole suite of flyers that we've already developed and are continuing to develop to reach specific niches within this group to get them to understand the provisions of the DREAM Act and to apply. And we're also working with community groups who deal specifically with foster youth. We have a foster youth program on our campus, and where we train foster youth parents in a number of different areas, and where applicable, we work with them in helping them understand DREAM Act provisions for the students that are the kids that they may be fostering. The issue of automation was brought up earlier. What we have done here, and it's, I'm certain, mirrored on the other two campuses, that we have been able to automate the DREAM Act portion of the application that deals with the BOG and BOG waivers and making those students eligible. That is our responsibility, is to determine eligibility for the BOG waivers and making sure that that information gets accurately reported to the State Chancellor's Office. We also go through the same process of the verification. It is the State Scholarship Commission that identifies students for which further verification is required, and then we use the federal process by which to do that. So we mirror something like the Cal State system in terms of how we verify accuracy of information. Also, if there is an application that is incomplete or has an error in it, that gets flagged, and we go back and make sure that we've worked with that student to make sure that all the information either gets turned in or turned in correctly. We have also created a step-by-step checklist that we give to students from prior to the admission process all the way through the completion of the DREAM Act application that was developed internally on campus. We also use mass emails to identify, to those students that we have identified as AB 540 eligible, students who may not have gotten a BOG waiver, to determine whether or not they are eligible for the DREAM Act. And then we also do a lot of cross-training with other student services related staff. Whether or not they actually work in counseling doesn't mean they don't have contact with students. We do the training, for example, with our bookstore staff because they may come in contact with students or have reason to be aware of a student who may in fact be eligible for the DREAM Act that has otherwise fallen through the cracks. We are continuing our outreach efforts. We have a major workshop planned for spring 2014 in collaboration with our CalWorks staff. We are also developing additional webinars to train counselors, other staff, and high school counselors. And we are also reaching out to students who are categorized as Type 9, which is basically non-resident students that are known as foreign students. They may not have been born in a foreign country, but they are designated foreign students, to see if they may also be eligible for the DREAM Act. Someone else earlier asked what are some of the challenges that we're facing. In addition to relatively low numbers of applicants, one of the issues is getting students to complete the application accurately and completely. And there's, again, that's been mentioned several times by speakers, the reluctance of students to complete all of the information because of their parents being concerned about how the information is going to be used. And again, that's an issue of trust. And that's where the high touch versus high tech comes in. We can automate and try to gain as much efficiency as we can in making sure that the paperwork gets done properly. But without that initial high touch going on, which is highly labor intensive, the application process is basically secondary. It's building that relationship, building that trust to get the students to be willing to complete the information, get the information from their parents, and sometimes it involves a tough conversation that may never have happened before, to get information that they maybe didn't have before in order to complete the affidavit, because that is an important portion of the application. And it's the affidavit where there tends to be the reluctance in terms of the sensitivity of information.
I would just add one comment. I asked Iris as we were going over all the detail with everybody of the 100% of the DREAM Act eligible students on campus, how many do you think have applied? Because that's a relevant statistic. It's between about 30 and 35%, so that's about where we are in the implementation, as I understand it now.
And again, they're all in various stages of the application, so it's getting them to complete the application accurately and getting it.
But is there maybe this will come up in other presentations, is there a reason why the whole identifying in the DREAM Act that it wouldn't be in admissions and records, and why the starting point is in financial aid? It seems like financial aid is where you would go, but identifying and being available and outreach is through admissions and records.
Well, actually, the beginning of the AB 540 process for our campus begins in admissions, and there is probably no standard process for this to happen. It just so happens that on the Moore Park campus, financial aid reports up through my organization, but the relationship between financial aid and admissions and records and counseling is no different at Moore Park than it is at Oxnard or Ventura. It's a collaborative effort, but a lot of the processing occurs through financial aid after that initial outreach and identification.
I wasn't necessarily thinking about Moore Park specifically. I was just, curious. The other thing that you made me think about as you were talking is that, and this might take, I don't want to take this too far off, but we were having discussions regarding meeting our enrollment numbers, and they're just a little bit off. But it seems to me that that from a business standpoint, the outreach to our potential students that would come in and be is that reaching out to our DREAM Act students isn't any different than any of the outreach that we would do for just generally, whether we're advertising on the radio or we're advertising on websites or we're doing anything. I don't know. That's probably how you're looking at it already.
That's an interesting suggestion in the sense that people respond when they know about something. And every time we probably do something that gets some of the information out there, we probably increase the response of that particular category. So out of that comment, if we nudge it up a little bit, it might make a difference, and we'll know it by the response.
I had a similar question on that bullet point about the targeted outreach to the 17 feeder high schools or feeder schools. Is that targeted outreach in your normal course of outreach, or is it targeted outreach in regards to this?
It is our normal outreach. However, our outreach coordinator probably knows which high schools are more likely to yield DREAM Act students or potential students who would be eligible for the DREAM Act. We have 17 high schools that typically send students to Moore Park, and we have done specific workshops or handed out flyers and materials and talked to counselors specifically about the DREAM Act. However, we do outreach at those 17 schools, period.
Right, okay. And just clarification, did I hear you correctly? Do you create your webinars or do you utilize existing webinars?
Well, we use a program called Financial ATV where we create the content. I'm not entirely sure about the mechanism,
okay,
but they are, vignettes are created on campus for use by anyone who logs in to the site. And what the Financial ATV looks like at Moore Park may look differently than Financial ATV at Oxnard or Ventura. They all use the same platform.
Right, okay. Very good.
And again, I realize that we're in the implementation process of this, so if I ask something, I don't want it to come off like, why aren't we, or what, because I realize that this is what we're doing. In regards to what was mentioned earlier in regard is high schools uploading, is this something that any of, you can share it as you continue with your presentations, but I'm curious if this is something that we're already familiar with, and if we've had any kind of engagement, or how do we know, like, if you're outreaching, we have outreach people and they're outreaching to the high schools, do you really know which high schools are uploading their grades and which ones aren't, or which districts are, or have we even gotten that far? So,
if you don't have any more questions, let me just introduce Dr. Richard Duran to begin, and he can incorporate any response into his presentation, and then
thank you.
Anybody else can add on as well.
While we're queuing up my presentation, let me welcome you to Oxnard College. We are pleased to host the hearing today, and I would like to thank all our staff here who supported this event, and also the people behind the scenes who are really doing the work with students, our financial aid people, admissions and records, the counselors, the outreach staff, because it takes all of us to be able to implement this. So I just want to recognize all of them for their hard work in implementing this. So you have a copy of the PowerPoint. By the way, audience members, there's a copy of the PowerPoint on the table over there. If you'd like to take one with you. So at Oxnard College, let me give you a little bit of data in terms of what's going on our campus with regard to implementation. These are our fall numbers. This fall we have just under 7,000 students enrolled at Oxnard College. You know, about 69% of our students are Latino students. So this is a issue very dear to us. With regard to what we have enrolled, we have about 256 students. There were AB 540 students. And of those, 192 received BOG waivers. So that's about 75% of that 256. And then of that, 216 were identified as Code 7 students, or 85%. And I didn't realize as I went to the data that there's different levels of AP 540 students. So
I just learned that today.
So we have 216 that were in the undocumented portion, and then we had another 40 that are Code 9, which are U.S. citizens and eligible for other things, which you'll see in a minute. And then of those, we had 199 apply for DREAM Act or submit their DREAM Act applications. With regard to some of the financial aid received, 12 of our students received Pell Grants. These were now these are the U.S. citizens, obviously, because that's federal. And then Cal Grant B, these were high school kids, seven received financial aid. That's a part of the testament to the outreach to the high schools. So we're trying to draw them in. Through our EOPS book grant, 22 of our students received grants for that to help them support their coming to Oxnard College. And our Oxnard College Foundation provided scholarships for 13 of these students. So you can see a little bit, it's very distributed, and the numbers that we have and some of the financial aid that they're receiving. Obviously the preponderance is in the BOG waivers. And so we do have some work to do with regard to trying to get them all going for the DREAM Act applications. And I think it's already been addressed, kind of some of the reasons that why some students might be reluctant, or their parents, and some of the other issues already identified. And we agree with those assessments. With regard to specific implementation, in talking to the staff, the implementation has gone fairly well in terms of the mechanics of it all. You know, because we have banners and some of these things we were talking about earlier. But one of the issues that came up in our campus is how do we deal with students who, when they might have been here earlier, registered under and applied as in a certain residence or non-residence, and now they want to access DREAM Act application, and the two applications don't jive with each other. Okay, so it becomes an issue of how do we counter the actual legal status with regard to these for registration purposes. And so we're waiting advice from the State Chancellor's Office to see how do we address that. Do we just forget what they did before and just submit them as DREAM Act students? Is there a conflict? There's some legal issue we have to be concerned with? Or how do we support that so that we can support the students to continue to move forward?
So this is accessing their previous grades,
right,
the work they had done, and they need to access.
And their status is when they applied to be here first, and now if they want to be a DREAM Act student, if they're inconsistent, how do we address
Is that, would you say, I mean, just rough numbers, how large, I mean, is that a?
It's not a big number. I'm going to ask, I think, our admissions, Joel, do you have a?
We've only had about 7 students with that issue right now so far.
That's still quite, it seems to me like quite a bit, yeah, thank you.
So that was kind of a unique finding that we had when we were looking at some of this. So, and there may be more out there, but at least thankfully it's not too many. It is an issue. With regard to how we're doing outreach and the FAFSA application, there has been a lot of training across the student services and providing information to everyone there so that they're already aware, so that anybody can provide information on this, or at least refer students to it. We are just highlighting some of the things that we've done to try to get the word out. We've had flyers distributed to high schools. In one particular effort, we had 20% of attendees represented were IB 540 eligible. We had the Cash for College workshops held 1 week prior to that March 14th deadline, so we're trying to identify. We offer FAFSA DREAM Act application workshops every Wednesday, and we make sure we utilize bilingual staff, because obviously some of our students feel comfortable in maybe speaking in Spanish primarily, obviously, or if we do have parents and others come, we try to be sensitive to the population. At the beginning of this year, in January, March, we visited all the area high schools, made a concerted effort to get the word out. We've presented at migrant education conferences in the Ventura County CLU, the Dream Without Borders high school counseling programming, again, like the counselors in high schools, STEM conference. We've partnered with the UC. They have a higher education night that is offered every semester, and it really targets parents, and so we partner with them to make outreach, and these are really targeting parents to get them to understand the information about applications, admissions, all that, to include the DREAM Act information as well. Our EOPS program has conducted informational outreach sessions to high schools when they're out there looking at identifying EOPS students. Specifically under our STEM program participation, because we do have a major initiative in our campus, these are some of the things that they've done to help spread the word in terms of providing information on any of the workshops, presentations, at the STEM Expo, and at the Mesa Science Technology Day, for example. We've had professional development for high school teachers and counselors regarding AB 540 university application processes and financial aid, webinars, academic tutor training, counselors, all these kinds of things. And that's in kind of cooperation with the Mesa folks, exactly. And then those folks have one-on-one ongoing in small group workshops with Mesa and STEM students. Because that's one of our initiatives here on our campus, is really getting a lot of our Latino students into the sciences and mathematics. With regard to, and I do want to call out our DREAM Act Club participation. You already heard a little bit about that. And our DREAM Club had volunteered to assist others in filling out their, like for example, the deferred action applications. So they've really proven to be a great resource on campus. I really want to commend them for their efforts and the initiatives they took upon themselves to really support this portion of our population. And one of the things that was referenced in April, we had co-sponsored a forum called the Day of Action for Immigration Reform, and that was an opportunity to learn more about some of the issues with all of that. Now on this one, I'm not sure how do we get this little, this is a little vignette I want to show. We press, can we press and, because I don't think we can do it from here. Maybe? I don't know. Yeah, just press it.
Press the, is there another one that's?
No, just go ahead, no, go ahead, go ahead. This is a video. No? Just press on that. Press on that. Yeah?
Is that your last slide?
No, there's one after that.
Can you forward it again?
Ah, okay. There it is.
I don't see a play button here. Right click, she said.
Right click.
Hit play. Hit play. Yeah, well, I mean, here's a technical expert. Come on. See, this technology is great, but you got to know how to use it. So otherwise, it becomes almost useless.
I didn't rise out of my seat to try to help.
I was about to.
What this is a just a 3-minute.
I'm sorry, Dr. Brown, it's the version of PowerPoint that's on this computer that won't allow it to play.
Oh man, you guys don't have the updated version?
You're right.
I was excited to show you a little bit of the 3 minutes of the.
Who's going to process that requisition?
A little bit about the.
Do you have the media on this computer?
I have no idea what's on the computer. Well, all right. I was going to show you.
We can post it somewhere.
Maybe you can forward it to us.
Yeah, I would glad to do that because it is. We did videotape that whole session, but this was a 3-minute segment to show you a little bit about the introduction, what the whole event was about.
And which event again was that?
This was the April 19th Day of Action for Immigration Reform. The forum that we held with the Dream Club as the principal sponsor.
All right, thank you.
And it's fully available. We have DVDs. If you want to see the whole thing.
Is it on your website?
I don't know.
Okay.
You can forward to us the link.
All right.
Okay,
Thank
I can
you.
do that. Okay, you can see it. But in terms of the recommendations, with regard to the implementation, here were some ideas we came up with our campus. That obviously we need to incorporate the materials anytime we do any outreach, as soon as we have some. You do have, and I provide you a copy of our flyer out there that's being finalized, and that we're also going to translate that into Spanish. So it'll be made available for anybody, anytime they want to talk about AB 540 on our campus.
And again, that's when you're going to do outreach generally.
In general, for anybody, yes. We'll always have this available in both languages. We recommend that they conduct a statewide campaign for the DREAM Act, similar to the I Can Afford College campaign. This is something that can be done through the State Chancellor's office, and we're talking about some initiatives of what they can do. I know they're limited in their staffing too, but you wanted recommendations, so here they are. conduct AB 540 conference throughout the county to inviting parents, students, and educators. We can host that. All three of us putting together our resources, we can make that something that really will get the attention and bring forth that. And then we develop district-wide informational materials that are common to all of us, and maybe initiate a task force to address the outreach district-wide, so that we can collectively look at it, because you're seeing we're all doing similar but different things. Some of that should be common, in my opinion, that we don't have to be, we can support each other in getting a common word out to the community. I know they can come to any one of our campuses and receive certain elements. And to utilize Spanish language radio and television as one of the mediums that we should get the word out to the community. So that's what we're doing at Oxnard College and implementing.
Thank you.
Okay.
Dr. Gillespie?
Thank you. And we'll wait for Lori to go ahead and get the PowerPoint.
Poor Lori. Do you have any videos? Do you have any videos? It was going to be strange if your video works and Dr. Duran didn't.
Yeah, note to the staff, let's upgrade the software here.
And one thing, it's nice to see that I have a whole hour left.
It'll be nicer to see that you don't utilize it.
Well, that's getting set up. Well, that's getting set up. I just have a thought in regards to building trust and getting to where people. I know that in Oxnard area, and I'm sure that there's the clergy council, or and a lot of getting the word out and letting them know so that they have constituents, they have people that they can get the word out and offer to go out to whoever they can pull together and start to get the word out to their people, because they're coming from a place of trust, and if we can get that information to them, that may be an area that might.
Great. Okay, well, thank you. And what I'll plan to go over with you are, again, some of the numbers indicating the numbers of students we're serving and the access to financial aid, and then follow that up with some specifics of what we're doing to outreach or connect with DREAM Act students, and then again some recommendations at the end there. And a lot of that will parallel what you've heard already and emphasize that point of the things we're doing in common, that with a little more effort we can probably consistently apply something district-wide and have the same message that's being provided to everybody out there in the county and area. At Ventura College, we have just over 12,000 students there this fall semester. 299 DREAM Act students initiated the admissions process, which means they started an application. We had 73 that are actually enrolled out of that 299. 236 students applied for the California DREAM Act application, demonstrating interest in Ventura College and interest in financial aid. 172 of those financial aid applications are processed or being processed. So we have 73 enrolled students, and we have then about 100 students whose applications are in who will either be interested in starting a late enrolled class this semester, or they're already planning for spring semester with us. Out of our just over 12,000 students, over 50% are Hispanic students, and so again, very interested in looking at how we connect with our communities in the area. As far as access to financial aid, 43 DREAM Act students are receiving the Ventura Promise Scholarship. 191 students, the BOG waiver, that's about $90,000. 6 students, the Cal Grant B. 1 student received a scholarship from Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers. And we have students, and I think it's about 15 that are in the EOPS program, and then they're eligible for grants there. Ventura College Foundation scholarships, in addition to the Promise scholarships listed, 3 students have other scholarships from the foundation. So we're looking at about $100,000 in support being provided to the Dreamers, and that could even be up to $150,000 depending upon the Ventura College Promise amount there. When we consider how Ventura College is working to connect with the students, our student outreach specialist does visit area high schools, about 22 a year, also alternative high schools and other organizations. And with a question that was asked earlier, those visits are to the high schools in general, wouldn't be specifically targeted to DREAM Act students. However, during those meetings, they cover matriculation and everything you need to do to be admitted and so on, and all the support services. And they also do specifically inform students and parents about the AB 540, the DREAM Act, and how to apply for that. So all of the options, the information are provided to the students and the parents there. We have a welcome center on campus, and the Welcome Center, that's the first stop for many of our students when they come to campus. It's right there as they reach the center of our campus, and a lot of students do go there for questions, and they have all the information about the DREAM Act and how to access that as well. Some other things that we have in place is the Student Services Department created an AB 540 resource guide, and that contains information on admissions, the affidavit, and financial aid resources. So that's a good guide for all of our staff on campus as well as students there. Financial Aid Office conducted 2 workshops for DREAM Act students in the spring of 2013 on completing the DREAM Act application, and had an information table on campus during Club Day this fall. Our financial aid staff, also we have bilingual staff to assist the students with completion of the DREAM Act application or the FAFSA. With regards to EOPS and DREAM Act students, we have 15 students participating in that program, and we really expect that to continue as we look at increasing the number of DREAM Act students coming to campus there. And you have a list of what DREAM Act students are eligible for. It's a great program for them, and we hope to have more access to that. We also have DREAM Act students in the MESA program, similar to what Dr. Duran mentioned. 5 students presently in there, and again, a listing of activities that they're associated with. So then moving quickly to the recommendations or challenges with campus implementation. One would be to provide adequate information through the web, printed materials, and personal contact. And that's an ideal area where we talked about how could we standardize that through some district-wide efforts there, and really look too at close collaboration with our K through 12 partners, getting their input on how can we best connect with their students and families of the DREAM Act students. Focused work with cohort groups of DREAM Act students to provide support and direction for success. At our campus, we presently don't have a DREAM Act club or a Dreamer club, and I think there is value in that, or setting up some mentors just to provide that cohort support, helping for success and for attracting more students as well. And then professional development and training for staff on working with the DREAM Act students, and then personnel support to meet requests for information and services. As Dr. Duran mentioned, it takes a lot of people to help DREAM Act students be successful, and I'd also like to thank the work of our recruiters, our registrar, the counselors, financial aid folks on doing what it takes to help these students matriculate and then be successful once they are on campus. So thank you.
Thank you for not taking the whole hour. I'm going to, before we get into questions or a little further discussion, I'm going to digress a little bit from the agenda, and don't feel compelled to accept the invitation, but Dr. Flores, because there was a lot of comments about K-12 collaboration, would you care to, do you have any comments that you might want to share or speak to on anything that you've heard?
Well,
Again, not to put you on the spot, but get it on the record, please, if you want to use the microphone. No.
I can stand it. No, I think the meeting we had on.
And let me, before you begin, I do want to acknowledge and appreciate you as an individual representative of your body to be here today to hear this.
Sure. And
Let's not overdo it with Dr.
Just in case everybody didn't catch, I'm Ramon Flores, I'm the president of the Ventura County Board of Education. I represent Area 5, same as Trustee Hernandez. Working with the chancellor, working with Chairman Perez, last Monday we held a joint Ventura County Board of Education, Ventura County Community College District meeting, where we passed a resolution where the two bodies promised to work together on efforts to improve access, options, availabilities of K-12 and the community college students, and help them migrate through that path. And everything I'm hearing I can take back to Superintendent Matu, because there are opportunities for additional collaboration. As you may know, Mr. Matu's office puts on literally thousands of workshops in support of the 20 districts, there was a combination in Ventura County, and these are the type of things we can actually put on just one small piece, but very timely information. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you.
Great, Jen.
I just want to thank all four of you for your time and that of your support staff as well for preparing for this this hearing and for the good work that you've described that's already going on. I appreciate your identifying the recommendations and the challenges, and those will certainly be addressed as I said as this process moves forward. Trustee Hernandez?
Well, first of all, I would like to thank you, Dr. Duran and the Oxnard College staff, facilities, the film crew, and everyone that put effort to prepare this for today, and also the culinary arts for the great food and snacks. They always do a great job. I'll put a quick plug in. They have the bistro. Is it the bistro dinners that come in the spring?
Well, we have them this on Tuesday nights.
Okay, yeah, but you got to get on a waiting list because they fill up quick, and it's just a really great experience. Best value in Ventura County. Anyway, I wanted to also thank Chancellor Moore for coordinating this, not only for behalf of the district, but the extra time she spends, and she is on the student aid, California Student Aid Commission, and that's very it's very good because we not only she has a front seat to some of the challenges and what's going on and helping to bring things front and center here. So we're fortunate to have that. So thank you for pulling this together today. Just some observations. I think we heard some great information, and it's you know, as everyone knows, our district as all districts we've been through some challenging times, whether it's financial and then here within our district and trying to bring our district focus in the board and with our goals and our master plan. So everybody's been working so hard. So this is another thing. But I see this as a real opportunity in all the kinds of different discussions that we had, and we've been having at different board meetings. And one is about making sure that we, since we've had to cut so much and we've been able to not give access just in general because of budget cuts, that as we start to go in, here's a population that all of a sudden there's a door open. And I think that also that it's not going to, that it's something as a board level, and we'll be anxious to take your recommendations, what the chancellor brings back to us, and how we can support. But I think that, and I had a conversation with a couple of the presidents on the break, is that if we were to just get the word out into families, and this is kind of a, once people understand and they know, and what's aware, and we have them ready to interface with them when they engage the campus, and the word's going to spread. People that are living or had to live in a situation where they've been undocumented, have a way and work within services and access and have, it's their life of how they've had to do this. So once we are able to get and let them know and let these families know what the opportunities are, the word will spread. So I kind of look at it as a big push and getting the word out, what's available, and then to be prepared. So that's one part. The second part is when they get here, that we're prepared for them and that we've gone through everything and the kinds of things that we're already doing in response to their, what after we're done and what we can do to help the district in general and pull our joint efforts together and servicing this population. I think we're it's going to be good, not only for the community, for these students, it'll help us address some of our enrollment issues also. So I think it's just all a positive thing that we can do and get behind. And I think that I know for myself, and I'm not speaking for Chair Perez, but I know we've had conversations about this, that we're anxious to move on with how we can be supportive with at our level with the board by giving you a policy that will offer you give you the support you need and in helping us to implement this and really reaching out to students. So thank you all very much. I think we've heard some great stuff. All the outreach things, the issues from transportation that we heard, all the kinds of things that we hear that are the barriers that will be dealt with. Internal barriers within the campus, barriers within the community. We have great partners such as the K-12 districts. So I think things are kind of lined up for us. We just need to put our heads together. And I know we've got some great minds here, so we'll get there. Thank you.
Thank you. Some of the key terms that I heard throughout the day are engagement, commitment, mission-driven, and again, trust. And I think, some of the experiences that we heard, particularly from the students, they highlighted some of the obstacles, some of the glitches that they've experienced, and that's to be expected with in any system. The challenge and the goal is to overcome those, to try to be as efficient as we can be. And part of the other takeaway for me is that this is, a high-touch process. It takes a high degree of manpower and resolve and support from us at the board level. So I'm looking forward to conveying at every opportunity that I and we as a board can to demonstrate that trust in all of you that are working so hard and so well to serve our students. So, Chancellor Moore, do you have any closing remarks?
Thank you, Chair Perez. I just wanted to, my closing remark is simply to say thank you for all of the work that the presidents are doing, the staff, especially those who have traveled from the different segments to come and share the information, and a special thank you to the CSAC representatives and executive director and program representatives. This is a tremendous amount of work in regards to access, and I think it was our goal just to kind of identify best practices as we move forward to better serve students and adhere to our goal and mission of access. So I wanted to thank all of you for coming out and helping us to stay focused on our one and only goal, and that's continuing to serve students. And a special thank you to Dr. Duran for hosting us, for the faculty and staff of Oxnard campus. I especially look forward to continuing to work with all of the faculty and staff, primarily the students, to find ways in which we can continue to serve this population of students, but also make sure we're adhering to access for all the students in the district. So thank you.
I just want to acknowledge I know we have a lot of different members here, but two community members that I think they're Ventura residents, so maybe Dr. Gillespie, we need to get them involved in our community, that's Pete and Maria Villarreal. Longtime educators and supporters and very, very good, so I want to make sure that we nab them and get them on our Citizens Advisory Committee.
No, he did put somebody on the spot. So, with that, again, thank you. And for those of you that traveled to get here, we will look for a way to appropriately keep you updated on our efforts as we move forward. Thank you again, and with that, this hearing is adjourned.